All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is absolutely, without a doubt, one of the most legendary rivalries in the entire history of sports, let alone chess. But as you'll see, this wasn't just a game. What we're about to explore is this incredible story where every single move on a 64-square board actually mirrored the fracturing and the ultimate collapse of a global superpower. So that brings us to the really big question for this explainer. How exactly does a simple board game predict the collapse of the 20th century's greatest superpower? To really get this, we have to mentally drop ourselves right into the suffocating tension of the 1980s. The Soviet Union was in this state of quiet, grinding crisis, both economically and politically. And in that incredibly charged atmosphere, the chessboard basically became a literal battlefield for the very soul of the Soviet state. It was a proxy war, the established old guard versus a really restless new generation. To understand why the stakes were so high, we have to look at how the state viewed the game. Garry Kasparov actually hit the nail on the head in his book when he called chess a cognitive crossroads that combines art and science within the human mind. You see, for the Soviet Union, chess was definitely not just some weekend pastime you played in the park. It was a massive state-sponsor project. Going all the way back to Lenin, it was taught in schools to mold highly organized strategic thinkers. Dominating the chess world was basically the Soviet Union's way of proving their absolute intellectual and ideological supremacy to the West. And out of that intense, high-pressure system emerged a total clash of titans. It's like a movie script. On one side, you have Anatoly Karpov, born right in the Russian heartland. He was essentially the perfect Soviet son. He was a loyal party member, absolutely calm under pressure, and they literally called him the boa constrictor, because he would just slowly squeeze his opponents by accumulating these tiny, microscopic advantages. On the other side, Garry Kasparov, a fiery, half-Armenian, half-Jewish outsider from Baku. Young, rebellious, super aggressive on the board, and representing a totally new generation that the old establishment just flat out didn't trust. Okay, so the crucial turning point is when these two finally met for the World Championship in 1984. 48. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the absurd number of games they played in that single match. The rules at the time dictated that the first player to win 6 games would take the crown. What followed was this grueling 5-month-long physical and mental marathon. The strain was so intense that the famously composed Anatoly Karpov actually lost 10 kilos of body weight just sitting at the board. And the turnaround in this 1984 match is just the stuff of absolute legend. Karpov came out of the gate flying. I mean, he took a massive 5-0 lead. He needed just one more win to end the whole thing. And honestly, anyone else would have completely folded. But Kasparov totally changed his strategy. He decided to just drag the match out. He forced an unbelievable 17 consecutive draws just to physically and psychologically exhaust Karpov. And it worked. Slowly, the champion began to crack, and Kasparov clawed his way back, winning 3 games to make it 5-3. But right when Kasparov had all the momentum, the unthinkable happened. In February 1985, FIDE, the World Chess Federation, held a press conference and abruptly canceled the match. They claimed both players were just too exhausted, so the match ended with no winner at all. Kasparov was furious. He publicly shouted, "The chess world cannot accept an ending of this kind." And you have to understand, this kind of public outburst was shocking. In a Soviet state where athletes were expected to just be silent, loyal soldiers, Kasparov was openly, loudly rebelling against the establishment. And it's right here that the story of the chessboard perfectly aligns with the story of the empire. It's like a split screen. Right around the time that match was canceled, Soviet leader Konstantin Chernenko died, which really marked the rapid decay of the old guard. By 1985, a young Mikhail Gorbachev took power, bringing in this totally new vision. And then shortly after, in 1986, the Chernobyl disaster completely shattered public trust in the old Soviet system. The tides were changing in the Kremlin, exactly as they were changing on the board. So Gorbachev comes in and introduces 2 massive policies, glasnost, which means transparency, and perestroika, meaning restructuring. This was a really desperate attempt to open up and fix the stagnant, secretive Soviet state. And this brand new political atmosphere completely set the stage for our chess rematch. Because suddenly, Kasparov wasn't just a rogue chess player anymore. He was the living, breathing symbol of glasnost, a symbol of freedom, youth, and change, stepping up to challenge the ultimate symbol of the old regime, Anatoly Karpov. So, fall of 1985, they meet again. This time, thankfully, the rules were capped at 24 games. It was incredibly close, an absolute battle of wits from start to finish. But in the final 24th game, Karpov made a single tiny miscalculation with his rook. Kasparov immediately pounced. He launched this devastating attack that eventually forced Karpov to resign. And just like that, at only 22 years old, Garry Kasparov broke the system and became the youngest world chess champion in history. But Karpov had the right to a rematch the very next year. And the 1986 match was totally wild because it was split between London and Leningrad, which added this incredibly heavy geopolitical layer to the whole thing. The psychological warfare was off the charts. Karpov actually totally reinvented himself physically and mentally just to keep up with the younger Kasparov. The pressure was so intense that Kasparov actually grew paranoid. He ended up firing a member of his own team because he genuinely believed his secret strategies were being leaked to Karpov. But despite all that immense pressure, Kasparov barely held on, winning the whole thing by just a single point. And the war just didn't stop. The very next year, 1987, they played again in Seville, Spain. And this match was heartbreakingly close. Going into the 24th and final game, Karpov was actually in the lead. I mean, he was literally seconds away from reclaiming his title. Kasparov had to win on demand, with the white pieces, which is a nearly impossible task against Karpov's legendary defense. But somehow, Kasparov squeezed out this miraculous, suffocating victory to tie the series, and because of the rules of the time, a tie meant he got to keep his crown. Fast-forwarding a bit to the end of the decade, the world was completely unrecognizable. In 1989, the Berlin Wall falls. By 1990, the Soviet Union had lost its political monopoly, and a multi-party system was actually allowed. The Soviet Empire was quite literally fracturing at the seams. And it is right here, smack in the middle of this historical earthquake, that Karpov and Kasparov sat down for their fifth and final world championship match. The first half of this 1990 match took place in New York, and this is where Kasparov made a truly bold political statement. He completely refused to play under the red Soviet flag. No way. Instead, he demanded to play under the new, pre-revolutionary Russian flag. The crazy part? That flag wasn't even officially recognized yet. His mother actually sewed it for him by hand. The Soviet sports machine was furious, of course, but at that point, they had completely lost their grip. And this 1990 finale was an absolute masterpiece. In one of the most famous games, Kasparov launched this brilliant, fiery attack where he sacrificed a knight, a bishop, and eventually his own queen just to completely crush Karpov's defenses. Kasparov won the match narrowly, 12.5 to 11.5, decisively ending their championship war once and for all. And in a really chilling parallel, just 1 year after Kasparov secured his ultimate victory, under that brand new flag, the Soviet Union officially collapsed. When you step back and look at the breathtaking closeness of this 6-year war, the stats are just staggering. Across 5 World Championship matches, they played 144 times. Kasparov won 21, Karpov won 19, and they drew 104 times. We are talking about over 5,500 total moves. They pushed each other to unparalleled heights of greatness. Kasparov himself even admitted later on that without Karpov, he never would have reached the level of mastery that he did. But the fallout from a rivalry this intense eventually fractured the chess world itself. In 1993, Kasparov was totally tired of the institutional control. So he broke away from FIDE to form a player-owned union. That essentially split the chess world right in half. Suddenly there were 2 parallel world champions. Kasparov defended his breakaway title, while Karpov actually reclaimed the official FIDE institutional title. Once again, the game of chess perfectly mirrored the geopolitical fragmentation of the era. And what's really fascinating is how their modern paths remain so incredibly consistent with their identities on the board. Anatoly Karpov transitioned into politics, becoming a member of the Russian parliament and remaining aligned with the state establishment. Meanwhile, Garry Kasparov, staying totally true to his fiery nature, retired from chess to become a prominent political dissident and a very vocal figure in the opposition. The establishment man and the outsider still playing their roles long after the chess clocks actually stopped. Yet underneath all of that intense politics, there is this profound human connection. Back in 2007, when Kasparov was briefly jailed for his political protests, Karpov actually attempted to visit him in prison. He was turned away by the authorities, but his words at the time were incredibly moving. He said, "My opponent yesterday is my colleague today, and today a human being in trouble." I think it's a beautiful reminder of the noble respect that is earned through years and years of shared struggle. So this incredible saga leaves us with a really provocative thought to ponder.
We've seen how these two absolute legends were a mirror for a collapsing empire. But ultimately, does the player control the game, or does the game control the player? Did Kasparov and Karpov actually shape the course of history, or were they simply moving along the inevitable currents of a society that was undergoing massive, unstoppable transformation? It's a fascinating question to leave you with. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the moves being made around you.